During the Iranian Revolution, 6 Americans managed to escape a furious mob. And in order to get them out of the country alive, a CIA specialist had to come up with an unbelievable cover story. He would pass them off as a Canadian film crew working on a fake science fiction movie. November 4, 1979. Inside the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, staff members anxiously watch from the windows. Beyond the gates, thousands of protesters chant anti-American slogans, demanding that the United States hand over the Shah, who had fled the country. With every passing minute, the tension escalates. Soon, the enraged demonstrators, facing little resistance, breach the embassy compound, while inside, employees receive an urgent order to destroy all classified documents immediately. The head of security understands how serious the situation is. He orders his team to hold the line, but with strict limitations. No firearms, no casualties. Tear gas only. The embassy staff is overwhelmed and confused. Any hope that Iranian police will intervene fades away. The fear of being overrun by the mob becomes very real as protesters begin climbing through windows and smashing down doors. There are mountains of documents to destroy. Shredders run non-stop. The incinerator overloads and eventually breaks down under the strain. In a desperate attempt to calm the situation, the chief of security steps outside to confront the crowd. Instead of diffusing the chaos, his decision gives the mob the opportunity they need. The doors are broken down, the building is stormed, the attackers flood through the embassy halls, discovering documents, photographs, and American symbols they see as an insult to their revolution. In the chaos, 6 Americans slip out through a hidden exit. But nearly 50 embassy employees are captured and taken hostage. The 6 escapees are secretly sheltered at the residence of the Canadian ambassador. Meanwhile, at the White House, the president's chief of staff receives a stark briefing. The Iranians are demanding the Shah. 69 days after the embassy takeover, the hostages remain in captivity. That's when CIA exfiltration specialist Tony Mendez is summoned by the agency's operations chief, Jack O'Donnell. He's told that 6 Americans have been hiding in the Canadian ambassador's home this entire time, while the other 50 are still prisoners of the revolutionaries. Although most classified files were destroyed, Iranian authorities are painstakingly reconstructing shredded documents, even using children to piece them back together. If they identify the missing diplomats and discover where they're hiding, those 6 Americans will be executed. At the same time, the Canadian government is pressing for the Americans to leave as soon as possible, before their presence endangers Canadian lives. A State Department task force official presents Mendez with a briefing on the 6 Americans and outlines the proposed rescue plan. Give them bicycles, and expect them to ride almost 200 miles through hostile territory to the Turkish border. Mendez immediately pushes back. To him, that route is impossible, especially for civilians with no survival training, no local knowledge, and no valid travel documents. In his view, the only real way out of the country is through the airport, using forged identities as cover. The idea immediately sparks intense debate inside the room. Some suggest the escapees pose as foreign teachers. Others argue they should pretend to be Canadian agricultural inspectors sent to examine grain supplies. But those ideas don't survive contact with reality. Foreign schools have been closed for 7 months, and the grain inspection angle makes even less sense. Who in their right mind would be checking crop quality in the middle of winter? Meanwhile, the remaining embassy staff live under the watchful eye of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The Canadian ambassador, risking everything, stands firmly by the Americans. At the slightest hint of a possible search, he hides them in a concealed room inside his residence. One evening, while watching Planet of the Apes, Mendez is struck by a daring idea. What if the 6 Americans posed as a Canadian film crew scouting locations in Iran for a science fiction movie? He proposes sending an official request to the Iranian consulate to make the cover story appear legitimate. Then he himself would travel to Tehran under that cover and personally escort them out of the country. Tony insists on it. It's far more believable than a story about Canadians arriving in the dead of winter to inspect grain. At the same time in Iran, painstaking reconstruction work, largely done by children, is bringing authorities dangerously close to realizing that several embassy employees are missing. Once the operation is approved, Tony flies to Los Angeles and meets with John Chambers, a respected Hollywood makeup artist who also happens to have quietly assisted the CIA in the past. Chambers understands that this can't just be a fake movie. It has to look real. They need to build a credible legend and plant believable rumors about a production about to begin. He warns Tony, the Khomeini loyalists are not naive extremists. They have networks and informants, even in Hollywood. Underestimating them would be a fatal mistake. For the cover to work, they need someone with a recognizable name, someone discreet, persuasive, and capable of publicly announcing a new project without raising suspicion. That person turns out to be Lester Siegel, a seasoned producer. His job is to register a fake production company, organize casting calls, and launch a publicity campaign, generating enough noise around the imaginary film to convince Iranian authorities that it's legitimate. Back in Tehran, the Americans in hiding live in constant fear, rarely leaving the house. The Canadian ambassador's housekeeper begins to grow suspicious. Why do these guests never go outside? O'Donnell gives Tony a hard deadline. He has 72 hours to present the full operational plan. Otherwise, the absurd bicycle escape plan will move forward. As Tony reviews dozens of scripts searching for the right project, he comes across a science fiction story titled Argo. To give the production real credibility, they arrange a meeting with the head of the Screenwriters Guild. Posing as an up-and-coming producer, Mendez, alongside Siegel, convinces him to support the project, formally launching in Hollywood a film that will never actually be made. Now, the fake movie has an office and a poster, but it still doesn't feel big enough. That's when Chambers suggests something bold. Involve the press. They organize a launch party for major entertainment reporters. Actors are invited. Cameras flash. Interviews are given. The cast has no idea they're part of a CIA operation. They believe the film is real. Soon, Hollywood tabloids start reporting on the upcoming sci-fi production, building the illusion that this movie actually exists, and the illusion needs to be perfect. While the CIA refines the extraction plan, the Americans still trapped inside the embassy are enduring psychological torture. Guards regularly drag them outside, stage mock executions, and terrify them with the sound of rifles being cocked. The fear is constant. The uncertainty is crushing. Back in Washington, Mendez meets with Secretary of State Cyrus Vance. Vance is skeptical. The plan sounds absurd, but there are no better options. Reluctantly, he authorizes the mission. Mendez asks Chambers to keep the Hollywood office running around the clock. The cover must stay alive. Before leaving, a CIA supervisor reminds him of something chilling. If he's caught, the agency will deny everything. In Istanbul, a contact shows Mendez the official immigration forms travelers must fill out upon entering Iran. These documents will be checked again at departure. Later, at Tehran's airport, Mendez discreetly steals a stack of those forms. After passing through customs, he takes a taxi straight to the Ministry of Culture, where he informs an official that 6 additional members of the film crew will be arriving. Meanwhile, the Canadian ambassador quietly warns him. The housekeeper may already suspect the Americans are wanted. Finally, Mendez meets the 6 escapees face to face. He tells them plainly, he's the one getting them out, but time is running out. The Canadian embassy is preparing to close. Their window is shrinking fast. He explains the cover story. It sounds crazy. John doesn't buy it. He believes they'll be arrested the moment they reach the airport. Mendez stays calm. He reminds them this is his job. And he doesn't fail. Each of them receives a fake identity package. They must memorize their backstories, study the script, understand the production details. If questioned, they need to sound like real filmmakers. At the same time, Iranian officials inform a Revolutionary Guard captain that Canadians are planning to shoot a movie in Tehran. And as Mendez forges documents, a message arrives from Iran's Ministry of Culture. A representative expects to meet the film crew at the bazaar tomorrow. There's no turning back now. Robert, unlike John, is ready to move. They can't hide forever. Sooner or later, they'll be found. Mendez instructs them to alter their appearance. New hairstyles, facial hair, wardrobe adjustments. They must look like artists, not diplomats. After one final reassurance to John that he has never left anyone behind, they get into the car and head out. At the bazaar, they are greeted by Reza, a ministry official. The group walks through the crowded marketplace, trying to act natural. The new Canadians discuss production design and filming logistics, pretending to scout locations. Then everything nearly falls apart. Kathy takes a photograph. A shopkeeper notices, and becomes furious. He hates the West. His son was killed by a weapon supplied by America. The tension spikes instantly. One wrong move, and the entire operation collapses. The tension reaches a breaking point. Even Reza can't calm the hostile crowd gathering around them. Realizing how dangerous the situation has become, a ministry official urges the Canadians to leave the bazaar immediately. Shaken and overwhelmed by the encounter, they return to the ambassador's residence under extreme stress. While the Americans are away, a Revolutionary Guard captain pulls up to the gates of the Canadian ambassador's home. He questions the housekeeper, asking how long the guests have been staying there. Terrified but composed, she answers that the foreigners arrived just 2 days ago. Satisfied with her response, the officer leaves. The Americans now have only 1 day left. They must memorize every detail of their fabricated identities. Mendez relentlessly reminds them of this. John remains skeptical, convinced that no made-up story will save them if they are lined up against a wall. Tony looks him in the eye and makes it clear. This story is the only thing standing between them and execution. Then, the unthinkable happens. O'Donnell calls Mendez with new orders. The operation is cancelled. The State Department is moving forward with a military rescue of the hostages at the embassy. If Americans are killed inside the embassy, it will spark global outrage. But if 6 Americans are captured at the airport under CIA escort, it would be a national humiliation. Tony is stunned, devastated. He cannot believe his country is prepared to abandon its own citizens. The ambassador urges him to leave quietly and burn the fake passports. For a moment, it seems over. Mendez walks out of the residence and heads back to his hotel. Alone in his room, staring into silence, he realizes something. If he walks away now, he will carry that guilt for the rest of his life. The next morning, the unsuspecting Americans prepare to leave. They begin to worry when Mendez is late, but then he appears at the door. He has already told O'Donnell that he is responsible for these people. O'Donnell understands that he cannot leave his agent unsupported. He immediately orders contact with Kirby, the man who can reinstate the cancelled plane reservations. Tony briefs the group one final time. At the airport, they must remain calm, confident, clear. If questioned, they arrived 2 days ago. Yes, they filled out entry forms. No, they don't know what happened to the copies. Mendez warns them that members of the Revolutionary Guard will be embedded among customs officers, trained specifically to detect Americans. Meanwhile, O'Donnell contacts the White House Chief of Staff and puts it bluntly. The operation is continuing, and they must secure those tickets. At the check-in counter, Mendez is told there are no reservations under their names. He calmly asks the agent to check again. In Washington, frantic calls are being made. Confirm the tickets. Push it through. They pass passport control successfully, but at the exit control point, the copies of their entry documents are missing. At the same time, the captain receives a reconstructed photograph of Mark, pieced together from shredded embassy files, and compares it to a covert photo taken of the group at the bazaar. Robert keeps his composure and presents the official filming permit issued by Iran's Ministry of Culture. It convinces the airport officials, for a moment. Then Revolutionary Guard officers order the group out of line and into a separate room. The unit commander, hardened and fanatical, declares that the Shah's era is over and that there is no place for the West in the new Iran. They are standing inches from disaster. John, fluent in Farsi, steps forward and takes control of the conversation. He speaks about the film, a project already mentioned in the press. Though it is science fiction, its themes echo the upheaval and revolution Iranians have experienced in recent months. He makes it sound timely, relevant, respectful. Tony asks the officer to call the production office in Los Angeles. Chambers answers, staying fully in character, confirming that the team is legitimately scouting locations for the film. At the same time, the captain and his men storm the now empty Canadian residence and order a full search. Back at the airport, after receiving confirmation, the commander allows the Americans to proceed to boarding, but the captain makes one final call, instructing the airport to stop the group. Passengers take their seats. Engines begin to hum. Armed Revolutionary Guards smash through the gate leading to the runway. But the plane is already taxiing. No one on board knows that a convoy of security vehicles is racing across the tarmac trying to stop the takeoff. Through the window, Tony sees the vehicles approaching. But it's too late. The engines roar. The aircraft lifts off, Concrete, fear, fury, left behind. Only when the flight attendant announces they have exited Iranian airspace and that alcohol service is now available, does the tension finally break. Relief washes over them. It's over. John turns to Mendez and finally says thank you. Back home, O'Donnell informs Tony that he is being awarded the Intelligence Star, the highest honor within the CIA's clandestine services. But the ceremony will be classified. Mendez files away all documentation related to Operation Argo, keeping only a single movie poster as a reminder. The Iran hostage crisis officially ends on January 20th, 1981, when the remaining hostages, held for 444 days, are finally released. Tony Mendez was an agent used to operating in the shadows, and this time, he became the man who risked everything for people his own country was prepared to abandon. The operation seemed impossible. It relied on lies, costumes, scripts, and illusion. Yet it became the most truthful performance of their lives. They escaped not because the plan was perfect, but because one man refused to walk away, and the world had to wait many years before learning the truth. Because real heroes don't chase recognition. They do their job, and they leave behind lives that were saved,